Go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Lisa Curran, as Bill said, new to the Roswell office, new to real estate. I think it's just incredibly overwhelming, the starting process. And so I felt like after our conversation yesterday, that productivity coaching might give me the structure that I'm yearning for to kind of get going. I'm also taking the Ignite course. I don't know if any of you have taken that already, but hopefully between Ignite and productivity coaching, I will be well on my way.
Yes. Yes. Remember, though, we eat an elephant one little bite at a time, right? So you don't have, no one's forcing you to eat the elephant today. Just eat a toe today. Okay.
Welcome, Lisa. We've all been there. We all started out with those same overwhelming feelings of being overwhelmed, and you will eventually get there if you just, accomplish something.
Right. Just do something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what we say is every day you can feel good about your day if you spent time learning and becoming smarter at being an agent, right? More confident. And you go out into the marketplace and you go meet a couple people that you might be able to help in the future, meaning grow your database, grow your pipeline, et cetera. Okay, I want to show everyone just one quick thing that came up earlier this morning. Matt, remind me what we're looking at. You want to
listing packages.
Oh, yes. Okay. So it's no wonder I was having a hard time visualizing it. Okay, first thing we want to do is we want to go to agent.kw.com. Okay, this is how to access command. Okay, I waited to explain this to everyone because I'm pretty sure there's a few people that don't know this, and it'll save you a ton of time. Okay.
And bookmark it.
Yes, bookmarks are your friends. Do you guys see all this right here? Like when I have all the goal sheets that I have with you all, they're right here, right? All the Zoom rooms that I go to most often, they're right here, right? The bills I pay are right here, the MLSs and all the Google Drive docs. I mean, you guys can make your life a whole lot easier by, kind of getting some of the non-real estate tech stuff, figured out. Okay, so I'm going into command right now. What we do is we go to this little paintbrush thing here. That's designs on the left-hand side. Okay, you go to this little thing called plus, not called plus, but you go to the plus sign, right? And you go to print. I don't know why you go to print. You just go to print, okay, and hit next. And then you get the little circle thing for a second. And if you experiment with a lot of the different stuff that KW does, look at all these, jumbo postcards, flyers, standard postcards, large postcards, business basics, listing, buyers, lead generation, got all kinds of pre-designed templates and whatnot that have real modern pictures that you're not going to get in trouble by taking somebody else's photography. By the way, we haven't talked about this in a long time. I just want to remind everybody, you cannot use somebody else's MLS picture as your own. Okay. And you can't go to like Google Roswell and find a picture of the waterfall or whatever, and then put that in your listing materials. Okay. That is somebody else's work product and somebody else owns that. There are attorneys out there right now that work with, there was one guy in particular, one photographer in particular that has an attorney on retainer. And basically every day the attorney goes in and Googles the image, and they can find where that image is on the internet and then sues everyone that is using that image. All three offices right now have a current lawsuit going on, and they want just below our, deductible or whatever. So every time that happens, it's like $4 to $5 grand to deal with, not even including attorney fees. Please don't do that. Take the picture yourself or buy it. Fair enough?
And
Sorry.
that's not just for listing photos, it's for any photos you use anywhere.
Yes, thank you for adding that, Pam. Exactly. So let's go to listings real fast. On the left-hand side, listings presentation or listing presentation. So here's several different templates on a listing presentation, and you can come in and use it and edit it to your liking. Okay. Now, I've said this a couple of times, and I'll say it again here, is I think that there's What they're calling is a listing presentation, I actually think is more like a pre-listing presentation. And we're not going to be able to go into all the details this morning on that. But remember, a pre-listing presentation is something that you send to the seller prior to the appointment, right? In a perfect world, you'll courier it to them. Say, hey, by the way, I'm going to be sending over a package of information about myself and my team and our experience and our marketing plan and all that. Would you have a moment to review that before we meet in person Thursday at 2:00? Yes. Okay, wonderful. So that does all the heavy lifting for me. And it's not uncommon for them to see that and you walk in the door Thursday at 2 and they're like, let's work together, right? Because if they happen to be interviewing anyone else, which 71, 72% of the time doesn't even happen anyway. Let me rephrase that. About 70 to 72% of the time, a seller's only going to interview one agent. Okay. So unless you totally blow that appointment, you're going to get the business 70 to 72% of the time, just the fact that you're the first person in the door. Does that make sense? Okay. So in the other instances, you want to have them have already looked at a little bit of professional, content from you, right? So that when you're sitting down with them and it's time for the listing presentation, I don't like that word. It's really more like a needs analysis. A presentation kind of implies like, Travis, you sit over there and I'm the one on stage and I'm going to be talking at you. And when I'm done talking at you, I'm going to leave, right? That's not what this is at all. What this is it's a series of predetermined questions in an appropriate order that you're asking them so that you can identify why they even called you in the first place, right? What their motivation is, how strong their motivation is, you explaining the process of what it's like working with you, all the different things that got to get handled and how they're going to get handled and how they're going to get handled with a low amount of stress. You share the comparables and you ask for the order. So we've got videos on the pre-listing process and the seller consultation and all of that, that are all over YouTube and our YouTube as well. But don't get caught up in this like presentation idea. Nobody wants to sit through like an 80-page presentation. Like Matt, if I was a seller and you came to me and you're like, okay, well, it's time for the presentation. And I'm like, can we skip the presentation? Like, I don't want to see all those pages. You see what I'm saying? Just show me the really good ones, right? When at the meeting, they should be doing the talking. You should be asking the questions. That's what salespeople do, is they ask really good questions and they compile information. They identify the biggest struggle these people are dealing with, and then they fix it, right? Or they provide multiple ways to fix it. Does that make sense? And when that meeting is over, the prospect is going to say, man, I really like that guy. And they might not be able to figure out exactly why they like me, but I'll tell you why they like me. They like me because I let them do all the talking, right? And I was able to let them do all the talking because they'd already seen my message prior. Does that make sense? Everyone follow that? Okay. Did that answer your question, Matt?
Yes, thank you, Bill.
All right, beautiful. So let's focus today on the buyer checklist. Okay, can everyone see the buyer checklist today? So I'm going to try to do the buyer checklist / buyer process simultaneously. We are recording this. I know there's probably going to be a bunch of questions. We have done this before, so if you want to go back and look at another video, that'd be cool too. Let's do this. If you could type in your any questions that you have into the chat box, that would be the most helpful, so I can kind of run through this quickly. Okay, so let me show you the. I don't have. Let me look at one other thing really fast. Okay, I want to show you this as well. I don't know why this is on 2 sheets. We always used to have it on 1 sheet. So this is a document that I highly recommend using because there's a lot that goes into a real estate transaction. There's a lot of different people involved. There's a lot of different steps that are involved. And missing any step could prevent you from getting paid, right? And quite frankly, more importantly, could cause the deal to go south, it's not just about your commission check, obviously. It's about the fact that this family is trying to move or this family is trying to buy something, right? So what we used to do is for every client that we had a kind of an Excel sheet that had, okay, so I'm going to show you this. This is an example of one of those sheets, okay? We had a info sheet and we had a checklist, okay? So the info sheet, and this is a Google Doc, right? So you can extract it, you can edit it. By the way, if you're going to edit it, don't edit the one that's saved here on the Google Drive. Pull it off the Google Drive and then edit it for yourself if you don't mind, okay? So what we did, and this is a shared file between my assistant and I. In other words, if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant, right? The reason why some stuff here is in bold and some stuff is not in bold. What I'm doing, well, the way we created it was we created it because my assistant Luth did a lot of the tasks and I did a lot of the tasks, and we were trying to keep it straight on who did what. If you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. So I want you to constantly be thinking to yourself as you're building your business, hey, this is a task that I'm eventually going to let somebody else do. This is a task that I'm going to eventually let somebody else do. This is a task that I don't actually enjoy that much. Is there anyone that can do this for me? You see what I'm saying? So I want you to constantly be thinking to yourself, am I doing exactly what I want to do? There's plenty of tasks that need to get done. Are the ones that I have identified that have to get done that I'm doing, are those the most pleasurable for me, right? Because we want to work in our strength zone. Make sense? Okay, so once we had a client, we created this document and we started to put down some information here, as much as we knew throughout the transaction, about what was going on, right? So let's say, for example, this happens to be a seller information sheet. I've got a buyer one in here. I'll send it to you guys on the WhatsApp a little bit later. But we have the property address, we have the parcel ID, we have the seller's name, seller's contact information, purchaser info, the MLS numbers, the list date, the expiration date, the original list price, the current sales price or current list price. You can see this was created like 5 or 6 years ago, because that doesn't change that often. Usually it's just one number, right? Seller contact information, lockbox number, CBS code, buyer's agent, all their information, listing agent, all their information, purchase price, closing costs. It's basically all the details of the contract. Because what I want to be able to do is, if I'm in a meeting or I'm busy with another client and I need to send off an amendment or something, I want to be able to quickly look on my Google Drive. Oh, what's the CBS code for 123 Hill Street? The termite guy's there and they need the CBS code. So rather than like not being at home and not knowing which file to look into, right, I got it right here. So this is administrative work primarily, okay? So all the things that we have to reference in the future, all the deadlines, like the binding agreement date or the offer date or any of this kind of stuff, we had it all recorded here so that we could get it on a very quick glance, right? Is there any details with possession, right? Is there a home sale contingency? When did the due diligence period end? All these kind of things. So it's tracked and it's easy to organize, okay? Who's the closing attorney and their contact information, the lender and their contact information, okay? So this was kind of like our information sheet on the file, okay? Let's go to the checklist for a second. So this is a checklist for a listing that we had in Woodstock, but we're working with buyers today, so we'll use this one, okay? Both of these documents, by the way, are in the Google Drive. So the first thing we do is we put the buyer's name, right, and the address that they're going to be buying. So I want you to encourage you, keep it as simple as possible. This is a checklist. This is not a database, okay? Now, so what we did is we had action, yes or no, what date did it happen, and any notes, right? And it's written in order. So every day at the beginning of the day, my assistant would say Jones file, and she'd name the next 3 things that had to get done. Davidson file, and the next 3 things that needed to get done. Sampson file, and the next 3 things that needed to get done. That way, she wasn't telling me that we had an appraisal deadline on the day we had an appraisal deadline, right? She was telling me that a week early so that I could deal with any issues that might come up as that date approaches, right? So the first thing we're going to do is have an intake sheet, Okay, we talked about this a little bit. There is both a buyer intake sheet and a seller intake sheet in the Google Drive. Pull it off the Google Drive, edit it however you want, and you should have a stack of them at your workspace. Okay, because you never know when a conversation is, you're going to hear something that says, oh, I might be on the phone with a buyer here. Oh, I think I heard seller, right? And you just reach over, you grab the seller intake sheet, and it's got the pre-qualification questions right on there with space to write the answers. Make sense? Remember, you gotta prepare. If you guys want to sell homes, right, we got to know how to do the contracts. Let's not learn the contracts the night that we're expected to write them. Let's learn the contracts a little bit ahead of time so we can pre-write them, or at least understand how they all function together, right? So if you're hearing this and you're saying, well, I don't know anything about financing contingencies, look on the weekly email and watch the video on financing overviews so you can understand FHA loans, conventional loans, these kind of things, right? Okay, so we got a buyer intake sheet. That has all, many of the questions that you would ask a buyer. Things like, gosh, buying is a lot of hard work. What's got that on your mind, right? We're trying to identify the motivation, right? So when are you looking to be in the Walton High School district by, right? What's important to you about that, right? How long have you been looking? Have you looked at properties with an agent before, right? The whole list of questions. Okay. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add buyer to the database with all the categories, right? So ideally your database is in command, right? So if you do have the person in your database, then you just go in and you tweak it, whatever you learned. Maybe you now have their address, or now you know what their kids' names are, or now you know where they grew up or something like that. You want to collect that data, because the more personalized experience you can give these people, the better. Let's say that they're a huge Florida State fan. Okay. If you know they're a Florida State fan and you know Florida State just had a big win, right? Say something about it, right? Hey, good game, huh? Oh, yeah. Right? People work with people they enjoy spending time with. Does that make sense? And they enjoy working with people where there is it's more of a personalized experience, right? They don't want to just feel like a number. See what I'm saying? So your goal is to find out some stuff about them personally, so you can bring it up periodically during the transaction, and they'll feel a lot more connected to you. Okay. So now we know some information about some additional information about them. So we're going to add their information to the database. Okay. Bold here is something that Luth did, or my assistant did. Okay. So once she finished it, she'd put a Y here, she'd put the date that it was done, and she'd put, hey, any notes that need to be discussed between the two of us, right? And typically once a week, we would look at all these together and kind of talk through our strategy on, okay, what do we need to focus on this week? What are your primary tasks this week? What are my primary tasks this week? That kind of thing. Okay. So what we've probably done is we've set an appointment to meet at this buyer intake sheet moment. And so we have the buyer seminar. The buyer seminar is basically a buyer consultation. Okay. We create an opportunity because now we've decided that this is a candidate that we want to work with, right? I always had again, there's no rule here, but I always created a Google Drive duplicate file for everything. So everything that was on Dotloop at the time and now DocuSign, yes, it's there. That's great. But everything that was a fully executed paperwork or contract, we downloaded and we stuck into Google Drive. And then we had a really neat Google Drive for each of our prospects. So if I needed to quickly go in and see the FHA amendment for the Jones file, it took me 2 clicks and I could see it, right? And my assistant was the one that maintained that file. Okay, so we create a Google Drive file for that client. We send out the buyer brokerage agreement, or we hand it to them blank on the day of the buyer consultation, and we get it signed, or we wait for it to get signed. So this reminds us, hey, do we have it signed? Yes or no? Okay. We set them up on an auto search. Let's say they're looking for a 4-bedroom home in Roswell High School District, and they can spend, between $400,000 and $600,000, and they need a fence chart or whatever, right? So we set that up on a search, and anytime a home matches that criteria, they get the message. Okay. I would also, by the way, copy me on the search so that I know what they're getting. What I don't want to happen is I'm busy with client A all morning, and then client B sends me a message say, hey, did you see that new home in Martin's Landing? Let's go see it. You know, isn't that kitchen awesome? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Right? You're supposed to be the expert. So you should be aware of all these homes that are coming on the market before your prospect does, where they'll think they're working harder than you, and they'll wonder why you're getting paid so much. Does that make sense? Okay. Next thing you do is, this may vary a little bit, but lender introduction. So for example, if they do not have a relationship with a lender, right, or they haven't spoken to a lender, mortgage guy, same thing, okay? We want to introduce them to a lender. Ideally, we want to introduce them to multiple lenders so that they don't think that we're steering them in one particular direction, okay? If they bring a lender to the table and you don't know who that person is, then it is your job, in my opinion, to call that person and say, hey, you're working with Chantrell and I'm working with Chantrell. So I just want to make sure that you know me and I know you and we both know how to reach each other. Is there anything in particular that I should know? Let me go through a couple of things that I've seen that we have to do to be successful in this type of market, right? How quickly can you do an appraisal? How quickly can you close? You know, have you already underwritten the person, right? I want to know, hey, did this person just call you and say they make 100 grand, or have you seen proof of it, right? So I'm testing the person to see, hey, is this going to be a quality partner here, or am I going to have to drag this guy to the closing table? You see what I'm saying? All right, everyone's out there, right? Okay, so then we have our first day out. Did you notice, by the way, lender introduction is the assistant's job. So what I want you to see there is that, and same thing with auto search. I taught the assistant I taught Luth how to do the auto search so that it's now her job, right? So all I have to do is tell her how to, you know, hey, 5 bedrooms, this price, this area, this whatever, and it's done. She knows how to do it and I don't have to worry about it, right? Which begs the question is, you've got to have a system in order to share how to do a job to somebody different. Does that make sense? So lender introduction, if that's now somebody else's job, then you need to have a template for that. Hey, XXX, this is, you know, Kathy Vitale with Shelter Home Mortgage. She loves helping first-time home buyers, or she loves helping XXX, right? Which is like fill in the blank based on this particular candidate, right? So you're trying to automate and template as much as you possibly can. I mean, we had it down to like good XXX, meaning, am I sending this message in the morning or in the afternoon, right? Or it was such a pleasure to speak to you yesterday, XXX, or this XXX, morning, afternoon, evening, right? So she'd say, hey, when did you talk to Matt? In the morning or in the afternoon? Do you see what I'm saying? So we templated it to an insane degree so it would be a very specific experience that they were having. Okay, so first day out, so we're going to look at property. Okay, offer submission, binding agreement. So now we got a binding agreement. Okay, now what happens when we have a binding agreement? Remember, that's in bold now, so that triggers a series of actions that need to take place, which are the ones that follow below. Okay, we do a little video congratulating them. Hey, I just want to let you know, this is going to be your home. Isn't this awesome? I know that you guys are so excited to bring the kids to this backyard and be a part of this community and have the swim and tennis community that was so important to you. I'm so honored to be a part of this. Congratulations. The next thing that's going to happen is boom, 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 right? Remember, we always want to have that conversation with people is here's what's going to happen next, right? And you tell them what's going to happen next. And then when you deliver on it, it's awesome. If you get off the phone and they don't actually know what's going to happen next, they're lost. And every time they're lost, they're thinking, why is this guy involved anyway? Why is this guy making $7,000 here? Right? I'm helping a personal friend of mine buy a place, and it was very easy. It was very easy. He sent me the guy's information. I had one phone call. We saw the home. We negotiated the home. And less than a day later, the dude's under contract. And I don't think he meant anything by this comment, but it's on his mind because he said it. He's like, man, that was a fast $7,000 you made, huh? Now, what he's telling me is, I don't think you earned it. See what I'm saying? So what it's telling me is I didn't do enough talking, telling him all the things that I had to do that I didn't bother to tell him that I had to do. Because if he knew all the things I had to do, he wouldn't have said that. Does that make sense? Okay. There was a time 10, 15 years ago, we'd walk away from the closing table with the biggest check. The agent would, because the seller was in a pinch and the buyer was broke, right? You remember those days, Candace? Right. I got several calls leaving the closing table being like, how much of that do you get to keep? Hey, how can I be a real estate agent too? Right. Then you know, you may think you earn the money, but they don't think you earn the money. See what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah, and Bill, I tell this story that I actually had a client who just didn't think I worked my tail off for them, and they bought a house that I found, and she became a real estate agent. And afterwards, she apologized to me. She said, I had no idea what all you do. And I said, well, that's probably, my job is to make it look easy, but my job is also to let you know that I'm working for you. So that was probably my lack.
Yeah. Okay. At least they came back and apologized. No one ever apologized to me. Okay. So we do a little video, compliance checks. So, right, here's what we need to do is we need to make sure that all the documents are in the appropriate place in DocuSign, right? So yesterday I sent out a checklist that was from Lee Fox, our Assistant Market Center Administrator, which walks you through a bunch of compliance stuff, what happens after you get a contract in place. So take a close look at that and make sure you know exactly what you're supposed to do. So once the deal is done, you got to be compliant with the office. So this is a reminder to do that, okay? Confirm the updated file in DocuSign. So you can like archive all the documents that were not executed or all the mistakes or whatever. And you can place the executed documents in the appropriate folder. Confirm updated file in Google Drive. Again, that's just a step that I would do. So I had a duplicate file in Google Drive. Okay, share the paperwork. Share the paperwork with the loan officer, that's LO, the attorney, and the other agent, right? Sometimes I'm the one sharing the paperwork. Sometimes I'm the one receiving the paperwork. But whenever it comes to me, I need to make sure that all the appropriate people have it. Okay, so the appropriate people are generally the attorney so that they can begin to open the file there. The attorney's primary work, as we know, is checking the title and getting all the payoffs and getting the file ready to be closed. The loan officer needs the fully executed contract so that they can open up a loan file for them and start to begin to get all the supplemental, pay stubs and tax returns and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so everyone needs the signed paperwork. Next thing is we create the custom buyer info sheet, because now we know what property they're buying, we know who the listing agent is, we know the details about the financing and the contingencies and the closing date, the possession, and earnest money, and all that kind of thing, right? We send a welcome letter with contract dates and deadlines and fully executed contracts. So we would go back to our buyer, let's say, and say, hey, congratulations on going under contract at 123 Hill Street. This is awesome. Here's a summary of all the important dates. Here's a summary of all the important deadlines, right? Please let me know if you have any questions. At one point, we even filled it out on a little kind of half calendar and said, stick it on your refrigerator, right? This is when due diligence period ends. This is when appraisal ends, right? Okay, we email the calendar of dates to the buyer. We collect the earnest money, right? We update Luth's calendar with the deadlines, and we would even put it on sometimes we'd put it on my calendar unless it got really, there was a lot, it just got too much to look at. But Luth would definitely have the calendar deadlines, because every day she looks down the next week and says, oh, next Monday, the appraisal contingency ends on Smith. Hey, Bill, what's going on with the appraisal contingency on Smith? She wouldn't say that to me at lunchtime on Monday when it's too late to do anything about it. She would tell me a week ahead of time so I could deal with whatever I had to deal with, right? Call buyer to summarize the next steps. Okay, here's the deal with the home inspection. Here's the deal with how to behave, so you don't go buy a car during the due diligence period or something, right? So I'm summarizing the next steps. I've already reviewed all this stuff during the buyer consultation, but I'm giving it to them again, okay? I don't know if Melba would fight me on this. She probably would. Wouldn't be the first time we disagreed on something. It's cool. We're starting to get along really good now, if anyone was curious. Okay. No,
After working with her for how many years?
a lot, like at least 10, more than 10.
You got some silent laughs on the other side
Oh,
here.
good. You know, when this whole real estate thing's done, I'm going to be a comedian. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so we're going to confirm the information on the community association disclosure. I don't know if she would say that's part of our job, but I think it is. I think that it is our job to take what we have been disclosed and confirm it. Because I have been at enough closing tables where there was not the appropriate disclosure, and all of a sudden there's some $250 fee, and the buyer doesn't want to pay it, and the seller doesn't want to pay it, and you know who's left at the table to pay it? The agents. And I don't want that kind of surprise. Okay, and I don't want to feel awkward. I don't want it to feel awkward when I say no. Really, right? So I'm going to call up the HOA and say, hey, I have a buyer under contract to buy in your community. And I just wanted to confirm a few things that were disclosed to us. Is the fee to $335 a month? Is there a transfer fee? Is there any litigation? Do you have any collections issue? Do you have any lawsuits? You know, you're basically going through the entire community association and confirming the accuracy of it. And if you find that it's not accurate, I would write the listing agent or call the listing agent and said, hey, you guys didn't disclose there's a $300 transfer fee. I think you should change this, right? You should make a call and confirm that you now understand that there's a $300 transaction fee, because it's going to be your fee. And I don't want to piss off your seller in 3 weeks. You might as well piss them off right now. You see what I'm saying? Now, the contract does officially say that if there is something that was not disclosed by the seller, a fee that was not disclosed by the seller, it will be the seller's responsibility. I get that. I don't even want to go there though. It's like, I never understood why people are like, well, I got into a car accident, but it was their fault. It's like, who cares? You're still got in a car accident. I don't want that trouble. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Kind of been on my soapbox a little bit today. Okay, we're going to obtain HOA documents. So if somebody is going to buy in a community with HOA, then I want to make sure that they know and I know what the limits to their ownership might be. Like, can they only paint their shutters a certain color? You know, in Martin's Landing, for example, in parts of Martin's Landing, your roof type has to be a certain type depending on which unit you are. So it can, like, the flow of the colors looks in a certain way. Okay. So for example, can I fly an Auburn flag outside, right? Can I rent my home at any time, or do I have to go through some type of process, right? What's the voting procedures here? You know, so I want them to understand, is there any restrictions on their ownership? Because that's something that might prevent them from buying the home, or cause them not to want to buy the home, I should say. Okay, then we have the home inspection. These are some of the standard inspections that a buyer might choose to do. They have a standard home inspection. They have a wood destroying organism inspection. This really should say WDO, because termites, yes, are the most common, but there are a few other wood destroying organisms, some beetles and that kind of stuff that can also be a big problem. That when a termite company comes out to issue the report, they're looking for evidence of that too. Okay, so a WDO inspection. I always recommend a radon inspection, radon gas inspection, particularly with homes with basements. Okay, and any other inspection like a septic inspection, or if the home inspector recommended further study on something. Let's say, hey, this deck looks a little weird. Let's have a structural engineer come in and look. Or, hey, there's some odd cracking in the basement foundation. Let's have a professional come in. Or, hey, we've got some water issues here. Let's have a foundation guy come in. So any other recommendations, any other professional inspections that were recommended, I want to make sure are checked off. Okay. Now, whenever the attorney gets the file, whenever an attorney gets a new file, they're going to, it takes a few days generally, but they're going to send out some form of an information sheet. They want an information sheet for the buyer and an information sheet for the seller. The information sheet for the buyer is questions like, you know, how are you planning to take title? What's your full legal name, right? Where can we reach you? All your contact information, that kind of stuff. So when they send you, hey, get your buyer to fill this out, you just forward it along to the buyer, make sure the buyer fills it out, and sends it off to the back to the attorney. The seller one, by the way, which we'll talk about tomorrow, it tends to have a lot of information. It's like I give permission for this closing attorney to reach out to my lender to get a payoff letter, and to contact the HOA to get a payoff letter and that kind of stuff. So we want to make sure that we're facilitating that. So I also then call the lender and the attorney. If, for example, it's a lender that I'm unfamiliar working with, or an attorney that I'm unfamiliar working with, I'm going to call them up and say, hey, I'm Bill. I'm working with the Smiths. This is how to reach me. If you have any problems, I just want to make sure that you know how to reach me and I know how to reach you. Okay. Because our job as the real estate agent, this is my opinion of our job. Our job is to choreograph everything. We got a lot of different players involved in the process, and our job is to make sure that everyone does their job appropriately so that my guy can buy the house they want to buy. Because if any of y'all screw up, my guy might not be able to buy. So I got to keep all of y'all at check, right? And if you got any questions, I want you to know that I'm here to help. And I'm willing to do my job and all of their job too, if necessary. Okay. They say that the better agent does most of the work. Candace, you've dragged some lousy agents to the closing table, I'm sure, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay. Where are we? Okay, we're going to negotiate repairs, right? So we're going to get the report back, the inspection report back. I'm not, by the way, I'm not going to make a big deal out of anything. I'm just going to share it with them and say, what are your thoughts? Right now, prior to this, depending on the market, like in this market, I would say, hey, it's pretty unlikely that we're going to be able to request anything. Okay. Well, let me rephrase that. You can request whatever you want. Okay. It's your due diligence period. They can't like see your request and leave the deal. Okay. But it's very unlikely that they're going to fix a bunch of stuff, particularly like dumb stuff like, hey, this switch plate cover is missing. Don't even think about getting that done in this type of market. They're going to laugh you away, right? We got people that are waiving inspection periods, contingencies, bringing $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 above appraisal price. You're not going to get your backward electrical outlet fixed this time. Okay. You can get an electrician to fix it, but don't expect the seller to pay for it. So there's some kind of dialogue ahead of time, prepping them for, hey, we tend to just ask for, major issues in the home inspection. And those tend to be related to health and safety, right? Like possible mold or systems that aren't working properly, or active leaks, like some of the more major things. Okay. So we negotiate repairs, then we update the Google Drive and DocuSign, because let's just presumably say we've amended the contract in some way. Hey, the seller is going to pay for have the HVAC system service, let's say. Okay, so now we have a new part of the agreement. So it needs to be in the appropriate place in DocuSign and Google Drive. Okay, we order the appraisal. And this is a little tricky right now, but I'll go ahead and state this. What we used to be able to do is we used to have enough time, like if we had 10-day due diligence period and let's say 21-day appraisal, we generally have enough time to get through the amendment process or the repair process or due diligence process. And then once we were satisfied there, we'd order the appraisal. Now we don't often have that luxury. The idea behind that was, if I just asked the seller to fix let's say a couple $1,000s worth of stuff, and they're busy going to get a quote for it, and then the next thing they know, they get a call from the appraiser, says, hey, we got an order to appraise this house. Can we come tomorrow? And the seller's like, I guess they don't care that much about all this repair stuff. They just dropped another $500 into the transaction. And all of a sudden I'd say, well, I'm not fixing that stuff for you. Looks like you're happy anyway. You see what I'm saying? So now you may not have that luxury, especially if you have to shorten your appraisal contingency. Make sense? So have some of that kind of theory in the back of your mind. Okay, so we're going to order the appraisal. That's a really good way to test out whether somebody's listening. Okay, I am being recorded, but I doubt he'll look at this. The buyer's lender that I'm working with, my buddy's lender, is a friend of his. He sucks. He's not very good. He's really not. And he's a terrible listener. I said, do not order the appraisal until I say order the appraisal. Are you clear? Yes, I'm serious. Are you clear? and he did it anyway, right? So I know this sounds a little like arrogant, but I'm in charge. I'm in charge and I know how to protect my client. So don't screw it up, okay? Because if you screw it up, you don't get to hang out on my team anymore. Does that make sense? Because I'm looking for A+ players. If I find out you're a B, I don't have Bs on my team. I can't have Bs on my team. Does that make sense? I'm getting a lot of stone cold looks. Okay. I haven't offended anyone, have I? Okay, schedule the closing.
I have something to say. We're going to get to A's at some point. Speaking for myself, I'm not an A yet. So these B's are still okay. I'm going to get there.
Oh, I'm not referring to my productivity coaching clients. I'm referring to my vendor partners.
You all are already A's because you're
Yeah.
doing something, you're investing in yourselves to learn more and faster. So
Well,
you are A's.
A's have their camera on. A minuses, they don't have their camera on. Okay, we're getting there.
Bill,
Ah,
that's
shoot.
not right.
Lisa, we have
I am
lots
not
of fun
3
here.
right now.
Okay?
So he's dishing it back to me, I see.
That was directed at everyone that does not have their video on. Pam, I learned a long time ago not to argue with you. That's a big smile. Uh-oh, now I'm in big time trouble.
You went out and I couldn't hear what you said.
Oh, good. Okay. I was just complimenting you.
Uh-huh. Yeah, right.
Okay. So we're going to check in with the lender. We're going to make sure the lender's doing everything they need to do, right? Hey, how are we looking on this? Anything I need to be concerned about? Anything I need to be aware of? Anything I can help you with, etc. Okay. We're going to check in on the financing contingency, the appraisal contingency, right? Check in with any stipulations and notes. We used to have a bunch of stuff that's like, hey, the buyer will get receipts for the work that was done, right? So we want to check in on that stuff. Or, hey, seller will share the HOA documents within 3 days. Like, did that happen? So what we're trying to do is make sure that every little bit of the contract that might be slightly unusual or case by case, we don't let anything slip through the cracks, and that we have a system for that, right? This is the system. Order home warranties. Gosh, I guess there used to be a time when the seller would pay for the home warranty. Is that true? Did that ever happen? Right? Don't expect the seller to pay for home warranty in this type of environment, but that was pretty commonplace a couple years ago. Okay. Okay. Confirm Google Drive and DocuSign are updated. Okay. I'll tell you, I had the best intentions here, and I think this is a wonderful idea, but I never did do it. Okay. Which is before the closing, go to the neighborhood and go to have a welcome card or something, okay? And go to, let's say, the 5 neighbors to the left of the house, or the 10 neighbors to the left of the house, the 5 or 10 neighbors to the right of the house, and the 10 neighbors across the street, and say, hey, I'm working with this awesome family, the Joneses, that are purchasing this house tomorrow, right? You could do it maybe when you're doing the walkthrough with the buyer, okay? Actually, that's not on here. I should probably put that on here. Typically, the morning of the closing or the day before the closing, you'll do a final walkthrough with the buyer to confirm that the home is in the condition you expected it to be in, right? That it was in the condition that it was when you went under contract. An example of that would be like, let's say they, maybe the seller said, hey, I'll clean the gutters, and then they never cleaned the gutters. Or, hey, making sure the home wasn't messed up when they were moving out, like when they took the sofa and put a big hole in the wall or something like that, right? So we're confirming that the repairs were done appropriately and that the home is in the condition that you expect it to be in. So maybe when I would go out during that visit, I'd go a little early and I'd go to all the neighbors and say, hey, the Joneses are moving in tomorrow. Would you sign this as one of their new neighbors and welcome them, right? By the way, when was the last time you thought about selling? Right? Do you happen to know anybody that's looking to move that we could help? Right? Well, I got you here. When it comes to real estate, who is it that you trust? Right? Well, I'd love to earn that responsibility. Is there anything that I can do for you today? Right? Let me make sure I have your email address, because this home is going to change the value of your home. Right? And I suspect most people that own homes want to know their equity position pretty frequently. So I'd love to help you out with that. Anytime you give me a call. Okay. Right? And now, what a cool gesture you've given to the buyer, where 20 of his neighbors now have signed a little welcome card or something. And it's a win-win because now you know his 20 neighbors. And you might add those people to your database. And you might get a piece of business from them, right? So remember what we said yesterday. If 16 well communicated with people in your database per year gives you one deal, and one deal is worth 10 grand on the low end, each person you add to the database is worth $625. You might have just made 10 grand by meeting the 16 people that live closest to the guy that you just helped buy. Y'all follow that? Everyone needs a place to live, and you can help them whether they want to rent the place, buy the place, lease purchase the place, whatever. Okay. We get a clear to close. Clear to close is basically comes from the lender. That is what happens when every contingency and every basically thing on the checklist that the lender needed has been finally approved and they are ready to issue the loan. Okay. We used to do this thing called Georgia Natural Gas entry, where if your client signed up with Georgia Natural Gas, then you'd get a $25 gift card and they'd get a $50 gift card. So my assistant would put their name in on their website. They have like a realtor, like a affiliation thing. Okay. Final paperwork. Is there anything else that needs to get done? You know, is the file nice and clean? Closing gift, attend closing, take a photo at closing, update the Google contact file. Right now they live at a different house. So now they have a different address, right? And you might note them, you might categorize them differently because now you've gotten paid to help them, right? So I used to have a commission, a category or a tab that said commission. That told me that I was at one point in the past, I was paid to help that person. They're my champions, man. I do just about anything for somebody that gave me the opportunity to help them. You follow? Okay. Input, update Google contact file, did that. Input anniversary calls. We used to call the people 1 week later, 1 month later, and every year on their anniversary. Okay. Post pic to social media. I'd write a handwritten note to the buyer, send out a survey to the buyer. I'd write a handwritten note to the co-op agent. Okay. I'd ask for a written testimonial and a video testimonial. I'd upload those testimonials to social media. I'd move the file to the closed section in Google Drive, or she would. Write a testimonial for the co-op agent. Pretty nice, a little unusual, right? Because I want to get into a relationship with a bunch of co-op agents because I personally believe that if everyone was at Keller Williams, they'd have a better life, right? Let's see. So then I'd do a little bit of recruiting. I'd call the agent with a co-op script. I'd add them to their database, an agent database. I'd see if they want to grab coffee, and then I'd make the buyer calls. Okay, let me check the chat here. Okay. Own videos. What's the rule on showing your own video of someone else's listing? Yes, you definitely need permission, but you could do that. Thank you for asking that question. Can you share the link to the Google Docs? Yes, I will. Thank you, Pam. Chantrell, there's not a. I think it's okay. You're basically going to explain the process, you know, what you do as a buyer, you know, what the purpose of a buyer brokerage agreement is. I think that's fine. I wouldn't do a ton of work until you know that they're ready, right? That they're pre-approved. But I don't see any issue with sending it a little early and getting an autograph. No. Love the strategy.
Bill, in my buyer presentation, the very first step is find your realtor. So it's appropriate to get the BBA signed. And then the second step is finder. And I like to control that as much as possible so that I know I can get them to a lender that's going to really be able to help them.
Right. So that's a good point because we could be trying to do it backward. So when you sit down for them with the buyer consultation, they may or may not be pre-approved. My advice, you know, you want to ask enough questions to see, like, are they open to it? You know, are they does it seem like they're trying to hide something? Are they like waiting on something to like get repaired? You want to have a little bit of information, but I always want to recommend that they work with somebody I know, because again, my list of lenders is a bunch of A players. And the other people's list of lenders, I got no idea on, right? And a lender can wreck a deal in like 3 seconds. Make sense? Candace, do you want to add anything to what we shared today?
Only that the checklist for today was for buyer, for when you're representing a buyer, but as a listing agent, there's a lot on that list that I do just as a backup. I don't micromanage the buyer's agent, but I'll call the lender and see what the process is. I'll call for the clear to close. I'll call the closing attorney and make sure that they have everything they need from both clients in case I need to reach out to the other agent and say, you know, the closing attorney needs something from your buyer in case they're just in case. I always, and it depends on the agent on the other side too. If it's somebody I know who's on their game, then I don't have to be watching this closely. But I don't consider my job your job. I consider it both of us working together to facilitate the transaction.
Yeah, so tomorrow we're going to do the seller checklist. You'll see some of the similar things here. Remember, it's kind of like there are going to be things that you do that are your job, and there's going to be things that you do that's debatably somebody else's job. But the goal is to get the job done, right? And to be polite the whole way through, even when somebody is trying to screw it up, okay? Because there's a lot of realtors out there, but there's also, it's a very small community, right? So you do not want to be known as somebody that's a pain to work with. You want to be known as somebody who gets the job done, who works with great clients and great vendor partners. And if they get into relationship with me, then it's going to be smooth sailing, because I don't work with, people that aren't qualified or who don't do a good job. Does that make sense? So like I've said a number of times, I've got a bunch of agents around the city that if they had a listing and in this type of environment, they're going to get a bunch of offers. I call them up and say, Lee, 123 Hill Street, I'm sure you got a bunch of offers, but I want to win. What's it going to take? And they're like, oh, Bill, I was hoping you'd have a client for this one. It's been so long since we've had a deal. Yeah, give me 325, no closing cost. We're good. See what I'm saying? I'm not saying that happens all the time. I'm just saying this, it's a whole lot easier when you're well connected with a good reputation. Does that make sense? All right, beautiful. Tomorrow we will focus on the seller checklist, and let's see, is there anything else we need to chat about? I don't think so. If you could, I'm so proud of you guys. There's like every day for the last week, we've had like 1 or 2 people that had a closing or capped or something like that. So congratulations, you guys are rocking it. If you could take a quick minute, I am meeting with 2 of my coaches today and 1 tomorrow. And of course, they always want to see what's going on. Today is the final day of the 3rd week of April. So please make sure that your tracking is updated. And let's give it our all today to make sure that we can put up some numbers that we're proud of. And we'll see you tomorrow.